Hello and welcome to week 2. As we have come to the beginning of week 2 and we have already completed week 1 where you have also gone through assignment of designing the strategy for education in general and foundational education stage in particular. You have got a hang of what being an educational leader actually means and what kind of challenges does it pose before you and before anyone who wishes to come to this field. So that is all you are already aware of. In week 2, what we are going to do, we are going to understand in detail the foundational education stage, the curriculum of the foundational education stage, what it should consist of, the pedagogical techniques and frameworks that are available that can be used. So that will be also, you will be exposed to that. And finally, you will be discussing the much awaited discussion on technology, how much to utilize, how to utilize, and what all is available with regards to technology and how technology offers you as education, what technology offers you as educational leader. So all that you will understand in detail. And finally, we will also provide and help you a design strategy for the foundational education stage. We will not provide a whole blueprint of all the education stages of the foundational education stage for all the years and all those detailed, but we will give you a guidance on how to do that. So once it is done, you can design it for yourself and customize it according to the need of your child or your children, depending on whether you are willing to or engaged in educating a single child or a group of children. So that is what you need to do as an education leader. So let us move further. As we have already discussed that CAS framework, that is knowledge, attitude, skills and habits, are primordial to and very important to the curriculum at the foundational education stage and at any stage of education for that matter. And in that also a certain sequentiality is there. A sequentiality of habits, then attitudes, then knowledge and skills follow. So that we have already discussed. What we are going to discuss today in detail is regarding each one of them one by one. So coming to habits. So what are habits? So habits are nothing but patterns of behavior which are depicted in day-to-day life and which are kind of unconscious behavior, right? So once you start having a belief that I have developed this habit and this habit cannot be changed, so that kind of a frame of mind is very destructive, and it is not only destructive, it is it will lead you to some kind of a denigrative path. So you need to understand that habits actually can be changed with regular patterns of practice. Any habit can be changed actually, and there is nothing in this world, and there are only a few small things on which you are really dependent, without which you cannot live. Apart from that, everything else is actually secondary to your living, and you cannot just assume that you cannot live without this thing or that thing. This is just an assumption you are throwing upon your living, so that you should not do. And as an adult and as well as a child, the child should, and once you as adults start throwing this whole idea that habits cannot be can be changed, then children also will realize, and for children it is easy and for adults it's a little difficult. That is why we are emphasizing on the fact that At the foundational education stage, changing habits is easier as well as more important to be practiced. So if you talk about habits, I would like to quote that it is easier to build strong children than to repair strong broken adults. So once your habits are not according to what generally it is important for healthy living as well as for a healthy lifestyle, and for as well as what can help you in becoming wise and wealthy and all that. So once you are not possessing those habits, you need to cultivate those habits, and it's easier to cultivate in children than in adults, but adults also can do so. There is no reason why any adult should assume that there cannot be change in their habits. So that is the first thing. And the biggest habit one needs to develop in this regard is the habit of changing habits if deemed necessary, habits of changing habits. So this is very important. The habit of changing habits if deemed necessary is the biggest habit you need to develop. Learning the process is very important. This leads to development of a certain kind of willpower, and if you start saying that I cannot change my habit, then your willpower starts declining, that you start believing that I cannot do this or I cannot do that, and that kind of belief leads to declining of your body as well. So your mind starts accepting, and your mind and heart and soul starts accepting that this cannot be done, and once that you reach into that kind of a framework, then your body also does not react to scenarios, and that is why your mind and body starts becoming weak, and your immunity in general starts becoming weak. So if you also think about health, so a lot of diseases are psychosomatic in nature. So if they are psychosomatic in nature, that means that they relate to your psyche, and if you keep your psyche strong from the very beginning, and you if you learn the habit that so I when I am talking about this, I got reminded of the great cyclist who was suffering from cancer, and he overcome that just by the very willpower that I can do that. So that kind of a willpower is required. So willpower is very important, and willpower needs to be developed, and at a young age this kind of a development is very important, necessary. So you have to make choices in life. So one has to understand that one has to make choices in life and not get addicted to something. What is addiction? Addiction is nothing but a false belief that I cannot live without, and that must be avoided. Say for example, eating practice only. So there are a lot of children who start believing that I cannot eat if I am not watching television, or if I am not watching some video on a mobile phone. So that belief comes from the fact that they are get habituated to it, and their parents also reaffirm that belief. So that kind of a thing is not very conducive to their health. So one needs to be very conscious about the habits, what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and all those things. And cultivation of habits is very important for health of the children and for their education, because health is directly related to education, because whether it be mental and physical, so the mental and physical health is going to determine whether the child is going to be successful in a certain kind of a intelligence. And that is why it's very important that the mental and physical health of the child is good. So that is why habits need to be of a certain kind for ensuring that kind of a health. So neurons that, and in that context only I would like to say that neurons that wire together fire together. So you need to wire your neurons in such a manner and keep wiring and rewiring it depending on your needs also. So depending on your needs, you need to cultivate new habits as well, and new habits which are healthy in nature. And your biggest friend and your biggest life partner is no one but your own body. And so that is why you need to take care of your body, your health, your physical health, your mental health, your own well-being. Then only you will be able to become a very good professional in any domain, and develop your intellect in any domain, any kind of intelligence. So that is why you need to cultivate habits and fire your neurons together which are required so that you develop those kind of habits. And I'm of the belief that if you continuously do something for, say for example, this I'm proposing this 21-day rule continuously for 21 days, you will be able to unconsciously develop that habit. So it is as simple as those 21 days, or maybe 25 days or 30 days. So it can vary a little bit. I'm not saying it's a sacrosanct 21-day thing, but say for example, 21 to 30-day thing will lead you to changing in your habit. So please do that. So once this lecture ends, you should make a list of habits to be developed and changed, and you must make a routine of, in your life, and accordingly, because and you would be thinking that for quite a long period of time, but I would suggest that this is high time to do that. And for adults it's a, and teacher leaders it's a honest request, because if you are not going to change your habits, it is going to impact your children, and those habits which are harming you is going to cause problems for your children as well. So please don't create those kind of issues in your children's life by passing on your own habits to them. So please mend your habits. So educating is children is also learning from them, learning from the whole process. So this is an opportunity to learn, mend your habits, become healthy once again if you are not healthy right now. So this is the way. It is a whole process of not only teaching someone but learning. The process of learning will happen, and with these children you will also learn. And that is how. And if you are a parent, then you are also in a very important age group of maybe 25 to 35 years. So if you change your habits in the next 6 months or 1 year, then it's going to impact you in the long run in your professional life. So doing that is very much suggested, as well as there it is a sincere request from me. Please do that, because it will impact your children and your loved ones and their lives. So making a change in your habitual patterns is going to take your children a long way. Coming to a suggested list of habits to be developed, I would like to start with the quote, early to bed, early to rise makes a human healthy, wealthy and wise. So you need to develop this first habit of getting early to bed and rising early, going for a walk, and other aspects, other rituals, performing other rituals properly, daily rituals, and that will make you healthy, wealthy and wise. What is it for? What is it for, you would ask me? So the training, it is for training and programming mind and body. Once you develop a certain kinds of habits, your mind and body are programmed in a certain way. So what you have to do, you have to think about your postures, sleeping postures, standing postures, sitting postures. So that is the first thing. How and when to perform daily rituals, that is the second thing. So daily rituals needs to be performed in a certain way. Maybe just after getting from bed, you need to take some time out to take some lukewarm water and then maybe proceed to your washroom and all that, so that you need to think. Your whole process of life should be planned, and it should be planned in, you must be programmed in such a manner that it becomes a habit in you. Then what, when, where, how and which all food items to eat, how to drink water and other mm, kinds of drinking things, so that you need to think. You need to develop a habit with regard to hygiene and cleanliness of body parts. Maybe some of the things need to be cleaned on a daily basis, some of them on a weekly basis, so you need to think about that. Then you need to also think about behavioral attributes and habits such as respect for elders, love and compassion for same aged and younger ones. Because when you are thinking about it and planning for it, then you are also nurturing it in your children, because children learn by observing you. So when they are observing, they are continuously also getting habituated to what you are doing, because they are also doing the same thing. Then developing the spiritual dimension is important. So yoga and other rituals based on faith and across faiths need to be performed on a daily basis. Daily, weekly, monthly, yearly and long-term planning, developing a sense of time, referring a calendar and a clock. So this is also very important. So this must be habit of any person who wants to be successful and wants to be happy. He has to have a certain amount of planning embedded, and planning embedded in such a manner that it becomes a habit. But I would caution this idea of referring to calendar and clock, that do not get too much affected as well. So be cautious and be planned, but don't get into a habit of watching the clock every time and what's happening and getting agitated. Be calm, composed in any scenario. You need to understand that nothing in this world is going to change your life. The only thing that is going to change your life is your own behavior, your own rash behavior, and sometimes that leads to certain kind of unhealthy outcomes, so that you need not do. Apart from that, nothing much will happen. You need to plan and work, and that is going to, things are going to fall in place. So that is the attitude. So we will come to the next aspect of attitude in the in a little while. But before that, you need to understand that when you are thinking about the habits to be developed, you need to think about the health dimension and the education dimension. But most important of them is the health dimension itself, and obviously the personal dimension as well. So when you are thinking about the health dimension, you are taking care of the personal dimension in that only, because it is embedded in the personal dimension is embedded in the health dimension itself. That also you need to understand. So this is a very detailed thing on habits. Because why I thought of talking about habits in the curriculum part in a little detail, because about the intelligences and other parts, knowledge and skills, we keep talking, and we will keep talking in pedagogy, in technology, and even when we talk about the blueprint. And in the blueprint, I will again come back to the idea of habits. But in other parts, maybe when we are talking about pedagogy, we are not going to talk in that detail. But that doesn't mean this is not important. This is the most important aspect of learning, and at the foundational education stage, they are going to serve as the bedrock. So that you need to understand. Now let us move further and understand about attitudes. So attitudes, as you would have heard this very famous and overused quote that attitude determines the altitude. So whether it determines the altitude or not, you should understand that attitude is the secret of a fulfilled life. So there, I talk about only 5 set of attitudes that one needs to cultivate in their children. It's very difficult to cultivate, but you need to understand and think about what pedagogies to use for this and how to do that. But that needs to be well thought of, and nothing much needs to be done. Some things are very natural in nature, that natural purity need not be polluted. That is all you need to do with the children to ensure that these attitudes remain, because these attitudes are already ingrained in children. What you need to do is ensure that there is no pollution by the external environment of these attitudes. The first attitude is equanimity. When I talk about equanimity, I get reminded of a very small couplet written by me, that न जीत का दंभ हो, न हार का रंज हो, तभी तो मनुष्य हो. So that is what equanimity is actually, wherein where you are winning or losing, it doesn't really matter for you. You are in a similar balanced state. You are enjoying your path of life. You are enjoying the, and it relates to learning to celebrate the whole journey of life and not only milestones. So you need not only think about the milestones and the meal ka patthar, but you need to understand that life is all about journeys and not the destinations and the milestones. So that is the way you should take your life, and you should teach your children, and the children who are getting educated from you. So you should inculcate in them this fundamental belief that it doesn't really matter whether you win or lose. You have to be thinking that you are living it, you are enjoying it. Whether you lose or win doesn't really matter. What really matters that you performed, and you performed like a winner. So winning doesn't matter. Your performance only ensures that whether you are a winner or not. And there the matter ends. So that is the first thing. The second thing that I would like to talk about is, and that is, for that I have taken a Hindi word called samdarsita. One has to ensure that the children understand and treat everyone equal. So I have not used words like equality, etc., because samdarsita is something where there is equality of vision. That means that the person starts experiencing samdarsita, then he has an equality of vision, and he does not differentiate neither between the living and the non-living. Also he does not differentiate. Everything is equal in this nature for him or her, and that is the kind of treatment one needs to do with himself and with others. So how he treats him or himself or herself, he or she starts treating everyone else. So that is the kind of attitude that needs to be built in children. So, and that kind of a attitude is already there. You need not pollute it. That is what I am still emphasizing on. Then the third point I would like to emphasize, that the children need to be exposed to the extremes, but learn to adopt a middle path. So children need to be exposed to what are the extremes. Maybe sometimes it is not possible to expose it, because maybe the extreme of maybe the extreme of poverty is easier to experience, but the extreme of having so-called having everything or richness is very difficult, because everyone does not have everything. But that kind of experience needs to be cultivated, maybe by meeting people and understanding that they are no better than you. just by the virtue of that they possess something else. So that kind of a, maybe with certain kind of examples, and there are always ends to the spectrum, but that spectrum is also very broad. So exposing the broad ends of the spectrum, and always in enhancing that spectrum, and always teaching the children that you need to adopt always a middle path, try to be on the middle path. So that is very important. And this attitude of sharing right from the very beginning is very important, and not grabbing and possessing this attitude that I possess this and someone else does not, and this kind of a comparison, this thought process itself needs to be avoided. You possess, you can share with anyone. That kind of attitude needs to be developed. So it is not yours, it is a thing which is there, and it can be shared by everybody. So that kind of attitude needs to be possessed, so that a detached attachment kind of a orientation, and maybe I'm talking about existential and moral intelligences in this attitude portion are in greater detail, but these are things which are very important. So I have covered much of this lecture through, if you see, much of this lecture has been focused on the habits and attitude aspects of it, because according to me the curriculum part has to start re-emphasizing on these two aspects. The content part of it, that is knowledge and skills, can be gained at a later stage, and knowledge and skills, it's only a matter of exposure and some kind of identification, which the onus is on teacher, leaders and educational leadership only. So that is why that is on you, and that is why that is not that important. And if you understand that once these two habits, the goals of habits and attitudes are achieved at the foundational education stage, other things can fall in place at a later stage. uh, Only the identification part can be done to a certain extent at the foundational stage. Moving further, if you talk about knowledge and skills, one has to relate it to what subjects they are going to study in the various levels, that is the primary and the secondary level. Subjects such as language, maybe English, because it is a global language now, and maybe a second a mother tongue language. Say for example, if you talk of the North Indian context, it can be Hindi. If you talk about the South Indian context, it can be Tamil or Telugu or Kannada, or maybe Malayalam. So that way, or even in the West Indian context, it can be Marathi or maybe Gujarati. So similarly, in the Eastern context, it can be Bhojpuri or Bengali or Udiya. So you need to think about all that. So that is another thing. Then aspects of physical education, social sciences, mathematics, technology, and arts. But these need to be thought of with the 8 intelligences. We will not cover more of naturalistic, existential and moral intelligences, which will be talked about in briefly somewhere. But and maybe the habits portion and the attitude portions will cover those aspects in more detail. But the knowledge and skill portions will more talk about these 8 skills, that we 8 intelligences that we have learned from Harvard Gardner. So verbal and linguistic, at least 2 languages, one English and one mother tongue, say for example Hindi. Listening. So listening is very, very important, and speaking. So listening, maybe technology can be of very much help in this regard, and we will talk about that in greater detail when we talk about technology and aspects of technology. And speaking is another thing where technology can be really helpful. Reading and writing, teacher leaders have to play a very important role in the beginning period. Once the children learn the alphabets and the phonetics and all that, after that reading and writing does not remain that difficult. Then they should be provided with library, with books and all the tools, with maybe reading materials, and then they can read. Similarly, writing pads, etc., and they can start scribbling, and later they can become better writers. Coming to the logical and mathematical, counting numbers, reverse counting. Again, here the idea of listening and speaking, verbalizing, understanding the difference between the numbers. It's not about just a word, but the conceptual difference between the two. So that needs to be understood. And then comes the writing, writing and reading aspects of it, where the teachers have to play a major role in the beginning period, right? Then basic arithmetic experiences sciencing through games and toys from trash. And I would like to quote Arvind Gupta here. There are a lot of materials available at arvindguptatoys.com, and that can be utilized. Clock, calendar. So getting a sense of clock, getting a sense of calendar is very, very important to develop those intelligences. Now coming to visual and spatial intelligences, colors and drawing, which is always a part of the curriculum, that is very important. Exposing to colors, difference between those colors, coloring, different ways of coloring, uh, different kinds of painting, and different kinds of art forms, etc., needs the children needs to be exposed to. Maps and globe is another thing that the children at this stage need to be exposed to. And at a later stage, not for children in the age group of 3 to 5 years, but when they are 5 to 8, then children can be also exposed to documentaries on history and geography and various geographical locations, their historical context, also the natural world. So also it will develop the naturalistic intelligence, apart from visual and spatial intelligences. So this is how the children need to be educated with regards to the visual and spatial intelligence. Musical and audio. Here at the foundational education stage, it is primarily at the beginning stage, that is 3 to 6 years, listening and humming and singing. So these are the two things that needs to be continuously done, and exposing into the sa re ga ma ragas and all that can be done at a little later stage, when they have started understanding and have the ability to read and write. Then they can be exposed to those things. Before that, they can listen to songs from the very beginning, even before the foundational education stage, and humming and singing. These are the two things that can be done. Kinesthetic and body, this is very important. At least 1 hour should be devoted to this. Dance, games and sports of various kind, cycling, swimming, etc., needs to be integrated in the whole curriculum. And other forms of sports as well. I have tried to write a few of them, so one needs to include a few others as well. Interpersonal, performing in groups, example dance, music. So here it is all about group work, teamwork, etc. So performing in groups, example dance and music, etc. Group work with regards to your work in mathematics, or in analytical work, or maybe even your linguistic work you can do in groups. Playing a team sport, etc., can be, this can develop the interpersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal, communicating personal experiences, beliefs and emotions, mostly by communicating verbally at the beginning stage, and writing self-reflection, example daily writing, daily diary writing at a later stage, can be cultivated. Natural, existential, and moral intelligences can be cultivated, one by building some kind of attitudes and habits, and obviously nature trips, morning and evening walks, sunrise, sunset, and bird watching, observing flora and fauna, interacting with plants and animals, etc., can help build these kind of intelligences. Thank you. In the next lecture, we are going to discuss about pedagogies of exposure and identification at the foundational education stage and delve deeper into how this curriculum can be understood by the teacher leader and how it can be delivered. So that is what we will delve deeply in the next lecture. Look forward to see you in the next lecture and do the one suggested reading on curriculum before that. Thank you.